Mr. Secretary, in recent days, BP's Kent Wells said that the company is considering an additional technique known as a static kill, or bullheading, now that the well has been capped. This procedure has been described as similar to the top kill, in which mud is introduced at the blowout preventer but may benefit from the current stop flow and lower than expected pressure at the well. What can you tell us about this bullhead kill? What are the risks and the challenges of the procedure that is now being considered?
The static kill is, would be a decision essentially to try to kill the well from the top. Some have described it in layman's terms as a sandwich kill, because ultimately everyone has known that ultimately killing this well is going to require the relief well to kill it from the bottom. But in the interim, what BP has been talking about is a possibility of coming in from the top and essentially putting in mud and then cementing the well from the top. Their view is that it can be done easier now, that you basically have a shut-in pressure and you don't have a flowing well. But I think Chairman Markey exemplifies a key role that we in the United States have been playing with respect to these kinds of issues. We will not allow BP to move forward with the static kill option if we think that it is going to create greater jeopardy and compromise the integrity of the well. And so there is a science team which is headed by Secretary Chu and includes the directors of all the national labs, as well as Director Marcia McNutt from the U.S. Geological Survey, and they are reviewing these plans and assessing the benefits and risks. And it is on their advice we will allow the science to lead us to the appropriate conclusion before we stop BP or we green light BP on anything.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. If the well is permanently shut in or killed through a static kill, then a definitive determination of flow rates may be precluded. And that would be a success for BP in its continued attempt to obscure the true flow rate of the well. If, however, we do move to a collection strategy, then it would be possible at some point to collect 100% of the hydrocarbons from the well for a period of time. Why is that important? Because BP will be fined $4,300 per barrel for gross negligence. Each 10,000 barrels that's spilled out per day for 80 days or so would be the equivalent of a $3.5 billion fine. 20,000 barrels per day, $7 billion, et cetera, et cetera. If it was 60,000 barrels per day, then the fine would be about $18 billion. So, Mr. Secretary, can you tell us what is the likelihood that we can get as precise a number attached to how much oil has been spilled out in the Gulf of Mexico because of the negligence of BP? We know that BP is trying to lower the liability. They want the maximum amount of ambiguity in terms of what that number is, so that the ultimate settlement will be lower in terms of what BP has to pay to the American taxpayers and to the people in the Gulf of Mexico. So can you just give us some sense of how precise ultimately the goal is for the Obama administration to establish how much oil did go into the Gulf of Mexico?
Chairman Markey, I agree with your conclusion that it's absolutely imperative that we have the flow rate determined in a way that is absolute. We have the best of scientists, again, in the world that have been involved in terms of looking at these flow rates. The current flow rate of the U.S. government, which came about as a result of very extensive scientific work, is between 35 and 60,000. There is additional data that has come in relative to pressure as the well was shut in, and that will provide an additional opportunity in the days ahead to try to come up with a definitive number that will give us the rate of flow at the time of the shut-in. But there are other complicated questions, Chairman Markey, that our scientists will have to look at, including whether or not the amount of flow has changed over time from April 20th until the time of shut-in. But I can assure you that the premise here that BP be held accountable for everything that it owes to the United States of America relative to penalties and other kinds of assessments against BP is essentially imperative for us, requires us to make sure that we have accurate flow numbers.
Well, again, I would just say that we know that BP will litigate this issue in terms of how large their fine is, as Exxon did after the Valdez incident. If it takes 10 years, they'll take 10 years. They'll take as much time as they want. I think it's critical for us to establish the most precise number right now, because ultimately the American taxpayers should be fully compensated for what BP did to America's ocean. We thank you, Mr. Secretary, for being here and for your service to our country.